The 2023 NFL Draft, it's done, it's over, it's finished, and we're going to close the book on the 2023 NFL Draft with a couple of videos this week. Today, we're going to be talking about the best steals in the 2023 NFL Draft. But what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy, Moro Ojomo. Just in case you did not know, so go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. As always, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse. If you want to support the channel, and then check out the description for our wonderful sponsors. But let's go ahead, get into this sucker with the first round steals, Nolan Smith, and I mean, you might as well put Jalen Carter. Kind of have them both on there, but Jalen Carter, we all knew he was at least going to be gone by 9. Didn't know it was going to be the Eagles that moved up for him, though. Good on y'all. But I really want to talk about Nolan Smith because he kind of fell in this. I had him on 16th on my total big board. He falls to 30th. A lot of that could be scheme specific, stuff like that. But he's a great fit for the Eagles. They already have a guy in that role in Hassan Reddick. And you're getting a stupid, explosive player who is very good, very physical in the run game, despite the lack of size at 6'2", 238. So really, you already got a role like filled out for him, a role carved out into your scheme for him. And that's why I really liked this pick. And on top of that, you could say Jalen Carter, just throwing a 2024 fourth rounder to move up one spot to grab arguably probably the best player in this draft. I mean, yeah, you got to take a lot of the red flags into consideration, but I mean, he's got a lot to offer. He's got a lot to offer, but I wanted to hit on both these guys. First and foremost, man, I thought the Eagles did a great job on day one. And the next player I have on this list is Christian Gonzalez. I had him at 6 on my top, on my big board. He was my cornerback 1. I kind of had 1A, 1B when it came to him, and Devon Witherspoon. Witherspoon was number 7 on my big board. But he falls likely because a lot of people thought he was maybe more of he's more athlete than he is football player. I tended to disagree with that because I thought he had a really strong finish to the 2022 season with Oregon. And the Patriots, they make out like a bandit because they moved down from 14 to 17 and then snag him. And now they got some size and speed at corner. And that's kind of scary, but that's a great place to go, man. I thought these were my two biggest, my 3, I guess, biggest value plays in the first round. So let's go ahead, move on to round 2 where I have Osiris Torrance, man. Going to the Bills. He was 28th on my big board, ends up going all the way to pick 59. I mean, contributing factors, maybe weight was a concern because this was a guy that was used to be, he was 340 at listed at Florida. And here I'm just pulling up my Google spreadsheet where I have all the information. And because I want to say he was, because back in high school, he was as big as 420 pounds. So weight might be something you might be concerned with and just something you might want to watch. But man, he is the antithesis of unmovable object. I think he's a really good fit for the Bills scheme. They kind of had it open at a right guard. Bills fans, you can make an argument all you want about, Ryan Bates, but you had to improve the offensive line some way, somehow. Wish they could have addressed tackle, but that's fine and dandy. They at least got Torrance early on in this class. So I said he could have fallen because of the weight concerns, could have fallen because of the lack of movement skills. A lot of teams kind of opt into that outside zone, wide zone blocking scheme nowadays, but real good fit for the Bills. I really liked that pickup. And then my other second rounder it's Will Levis, guys. Like, Will Levis was a great value. However you feel about Will Levis, it's kind of irrelevant. He was a good value. I had him at 10th on my big board simply because quarterbacks get pushed up the boards. He goes at 33. The Titans were trying to actually trade back into the first round to get him, but they were unable to get a deal done, but they were able to move up to 33 and snag him. I mean, like there were a couple of teams that passed on him, like the Vikings, and also noticeably the Rams didn't try to move up in the second round for him. So I don't know, maybe that's a negative thing with like Liam Cohen, used to be his OC in 2021, who used to be an OC for the Rams, because now he's back in Kentucky, and Kevin O'Connell from the Vikings, he actually knows Liam Cohen, so it's like they talked about this guy. So that could be a big alarm and red flag there. But I mean, given like he's got the arm velocity, he's got the big boy arm, nice build, plus mobility, has operated in NFL offense the last 2 years. Like there's a lot of pluses there, I think, worth taking a risk. I mean, I called this guy after my summer evals. I was like, this is basically big arm Kenny Pickett. That's what it felt like, because his ball placement was a bit erratic. And I could say the same about Kenny Pickett. These are guys that like put it in the vicinity, but it's not always the most ideal ball for receivers to catch, whether it's a bit over the top of them or going behind them. But yeah, no, like I thought the Titans, if you're really not that sold on Malik Willis, like moving up, getting Will Levis, a guy that is probably a bit more put together than Will Levis, more ready, because keep in mind, Malik Willis, man, was coming from a Liberty offense where most of his production was operated outside of structure, so you can't really translate that. You look at that as like, great, he can improvise. This guy could work under when things fall apart. But how is he inside a structure, inside of a clean pocket when things are going well? And that's kind of like, we had a very small sample size of that when it came to Malik Willis, and the small sample size we had wasn't entirely promising, but I thought it was good here. I want to mention a couple of others that I just didn't make overlays for us because we're going all 7 rounds here. Brian Branch had him at 23 on my big board, goes at 45 to the Lions. Tyreek Stevenson had him at 35 on my big board, goes to 56 to the Bears. Both those two teams traded up to get those guys too. And then obviously Joey Porter, I had him at 19 on my big board. No, my bad, 13 on my big board, and he was selected at 32, actually a pick before Will Levis. So let's go ahead, move to the 3rd round, starting with Darnell Washington. So large part, his fall came because of a medical red flag at the combine. You could talk a lot about some of these guys on the list that fell maybe multiple rounds that we were maybe had as like top 100, top 150 guys. And a lot of them fell because of medicals. Shoot, Sean Tucker, who ended up being a UDFA. Initially, my grade on him was a 4th rounder, and then stuff came out about maybe the heart problem, or at least the potential heart problem. He had to come back and get reevaluated at the combine, and he ends up going UDFA. And I mean, again, the medicals are kind of a big part of that, and unfortunately, we won't get a lot of that information until the draft, because a lot of teams like to keep that secretive. That way, okay, if guys start falling, be like, okay, how good do we feel about maybe taking this player here despite this? And so, yeah. But Darnell Washington fell because of the knee. I had him at 43 on my big board. Goes at pick 93. I think the Steelers once again moved up to grab him. And I mean, they're just making sure that they got boys that can block. They're like, we got Najee Harris and actually a couple other backs that aren't half bad. We want to run the freaking football. Well, grabbing a 6 offensive lineman like stinking Darnell Washington here, well, that's going to help. That is going to help mightily. Now, he ain't the most dynamic receiver, I would say. Some people are like, oh, what do you mean by that? He's great once he has the ball in his hands. He's tough to bring down, the occasional hurdle. Yeah, but he's typically running up the seams or in the or out to the flats. So his hands aren't like the best, let's be honest, but he's got that red zone size. They have Pat Freiermuth there anyway, who's probably more put together as a receiver than Washington, but still, I thought it was a solid pick. All right, next we got Josh Downs. Ends up going at pick 79 to the Colts. I had him at 41 on my big board. Reasons for the fall, I don't know, smaller receiver, maybe? Probably because 5'9", 171. Yeah, he's pretty darn small. We didn't see like a ton of like receivers get drafted in the top 60, because Tank Dell being the other one went at 60. He went at 69, right? Something like that. Trying to think of the other. Well, Jaden Reed, but he's actually got better. He's like 5'11", 180, 190. So at least his size is not terrible. Like, these guys are legitimately undersized. So maybe he fell because of that reason, but he's a twitched up athlete. He is going to bring a lot to the table, can create after the catch. He's going to be a really good target for Anthony Richardson. A good little safety valve, a good little dump off. It's going to be a very nice for him, but kind of surprised he fell all the way to 79. But a couple of the other third round steals that I had Trenton Simpson, 47 on my big board, ends up going to pick 86 to the Ravens. So maybe long-term Patrick Queen replacement. The other linebacker here, Dion Henley, I had it actually 48 on my big board, goes at 85 to the Chargers. And then a couple of receivers, Jalen Hyatt goes at 73. I had him at 46, and I wasn't really even that high on him. So I probably I even hesitated to put him as a top 50 guy, but I don't know. I thought his trump card was just a hell of a trump card. This is a guy that gets legitimate separation, but good pick by the Giants. And then Michael Wilson, I had him at 67. He falls to 94. A lot of that probably has to do with the injury history. If you remember, this guy's played like 12 games over the past 2 years, so that was probably big. But I mean, the Senior Bowl, he looked like a prototypical ex-wide receiver of the NFL. Ends up going to Arizona. Going to the fourth round, my biggest steal was Adetomiwa Adebari. If you're not new to the channel, you know that I loved Adebari. I thought, hey, if you're going to really swing for the fences, swing on a potential unicorn, or swing on the exception of, okay, he's a stout, undersized interior player, then swing on the one with 34-inch arms and now 30 and a half. So I had him actually higher than Elijah Cansey, though Cansey's probably way more put together as a pass rusher. But still, man, you look at the testing, and like Cansey tested exceptionally well, but I mean, couldn't really hold a candle to the athleticism that Adebari had. And I mean, the Colts are like, yeah, sure, we'll swing on that. Fourth round, I had him at 21 on my big board, and admittedly, I was higher than the general consensus. Typically, he hovered around 50 to 60, but he goes at 110, man. Extraordinary value there for the Colts. Next on the list is DeJuan Jones, and I feel like this one comes down to the NFL maybe not being completely in on tackles his size. 6'8", 374. Because, I mean, when you're that big, health problems can be an issue, and we've seen that with Mekhi Becton. So you're going to worry about a guy that big carrying that much weight. I mean, Daniel Falele, he went in a similar range. Massive human being, but I would say DeJuan Jones is the better football player at this standpoint. And, I mean, he's going to go into a place where he doesn't even have to start right away. He's going to be behind Jarek Wills and Jack Conklin. There we go. So very nice. I thought, I thought he was in that tier of tackles before the whole class just falls off. Then my boy Wanya Morris ends up going ahead of him. You had who else? Was it Blake Freeland? Did he go ahead of him as well? So a bit surprising there, but I could understand the sentiment that you might not trust tackles that size to stay healthy. So that's what was a big part of his fall. Falling to all the way to 111. Had him at 31 on my big board. So big fall there. Let me cover some of the other fourth rounders that I thought were good steals. We got Nick Herbig by the Steelers. I had him at 77 on the big board. Goes at 132. Keely Ringo, he was at 60 on my big board, goes at 105. So the Eagles they move up and they continue to get just good value in this draft. Clark Phillips, I had him at 69. Nice. Ends up going at 113. And Isaiah McGuire, who I had at 87. He ends up going at pick 126 again by the Cleveland Browns. So Cleveland low-key had a good draft despite their first pick not being until 74. Going to the 5th round, Antonio Johnson was super surprising to me. Like, super surprising. I had him at 76 on my big board. Ends up going to the Jags at 160. I don't know, like, I have a couple of theories. One, obviously medicals. Maybe medicals play an issue in that. The other, I thought we just saw guys that might be slot-only players just fall. Just fall in the draft. Brian Branch included. Really the only one that I would say got drafted higher than expected was Jartavius Martin. But then again, I mean, he's such a good athlete, like, and he has played center field before in the past, so he's at least got that in his back pocket. Antonio Johnson, he's more of a slot box guy. Like, he's a relatively good tackler. He can blitz well. He plays so well around the line of scrimmage. He's made plays in the backfield continuously, and I would say like he's like a tight end eraser. So, like, I think a lot of teams maybe just saw him as a big slot player, and that's why he fell. But, I mean, the Jags were like, we'll take it. Ended up being probably one of their best picks in this draft. Next, Darius Rush. This one did surprise me as the dude has length. He's just a really good athlete. Does he need to be more technically sound? Yeah. I think a lot of this stuff is guesswork, but I mean his I would say his burst, man, is just crazy, especially when they're going outside. Like, you saw that at the Senior Bowl on one-on-ones, man, when receivers tried to go inside on him, man, he was so quick to break towards the sideline. But I have him at 84, goes at 138. And I don't have a reasonable explanation for necessarily his fall, but I don't know, man. Maybe teams thought he wasn't put together enough yet. A few of the other guys I got here in the 5th. J.B. Robinson out of Florida State going to Carolina. Had him at 92. He goes at 145. I think it's kind of like what I was talking about with Antonio Johnson, maybe the slot only thing. Daniel Scott, admittedly, I was probably higher on him than the general consensus. I had him at 111. He goes at 158 to the Colts. Christopher Smith, I had him at 124. He goes to 170 to the Rams. I think he could come in and actually contest for some starting time. You got Olusegun Oluwatimi. I had him 116. He goes at 154, and there were just centers that I was like shocked went ahead of him. Guys like Ricky Stromberg, Juice Scruggs. It was just wow. And then Nick Hampton, a bit undersized, not too big of a steal. I had him at 128. He goes at 161 to the Rams, but I thought that was still pretty darn good value. And maybe just teams viewed him as a DPR only. Let's go ahead and move to the 6th round. The 6th round, right? Yeah, there we are, the 6th round. And it's Luke Whippler. And I gotta assume medicals, man. I saw Jared Patterson go ahead of Whippler. I had Whippler in my top 100. He was at 64 on my big board. He goes at 190. I get it. He's not like the fastest or the strongest or the most physically dominated. He wasn't asked to move a ton there at Ohio State. Their blocking scheme it's not really like they pull the center a lot, or he's even having to combo off blocks and move upfield. But still, man, like, he still tested solid. Like, actually pretty darn good, better than I expected. And he was just an exceptionally good corner at Ohio State the past 2 years. Like, I was shocked that the Texans went with a different Big Ten center rather than the one CJ Stroud has been working with the last 2 years. That legitimately shocked me. But he ends up going to the Browns. Browns grab another good offensive lineman with ridiculously good value. And then the Saints grabbed A.T. Perry in the 6th. Had him at 88 on my big board, goes at 195. And I saw a lot of smaller receivers who actually probably have return capabilities go ahead of him, and it kind of shocked me. Guys like Trey Tucker, Darius Davis. And I was like, man, I get it. I think he's not the most put together route runner yet, but like, I think a lot of his stuff maybe stemmed from, I would say, not the most put together route runner, but like you can see the quick feet at times, but it's just super inconsistent. He's inconsistent at the catch point for being a bigger guy, 6'4", ridiculous wingspan. Doesn't always catch with his hands, and sometimes catches with his pads, but still, I thought that was a big fall. Bigger than I'd ever expect. But now you kind of got the heir apparent to Michael Thomas on the squad. Ends up being a really good pick for the New Orleans Saints. Couple of other 6-rounders here. I got Tanner McKee, of course. I told y'all I was among the few people that had him as like quarterback 5 in this class. He was at 61 on my big board. Eagles take him at 188. Carl Brooks, I had him at 74. Could understand the fall. What exactly is his role in the NFL is like kind of the big question mark. And he didn't test out ideally, but he goes to the Packers at 179. Deuce Vaughn, I had him at 126, and he goes at freaking 212, man. And to Dallas, one of the best stories where his dad makes the phone call like, hey, you want to come work with me? And honestly, if you haven't seen it, it's good. It'll tug at the heartstrings. Zach Evans, I had at 135. He goes at 215 to the Rams. Jalen Duncan, who I wasn't even that high on. I was a part of the consensus that was like, yo, I think this guy's going to be a pretty big project. And I don't know, maybe the NFL's now more down on guys like that, opposed to, what was it, Rashad? I always forget his name. I want to say Lawrence, but the former Penn State tackle, where you knew this guy was gonna be a project, but he's got fascinating tools. But maybe the league now is just like, forget that. He was at 113 on my board, ends up going at 186. Keandre Coburn, who I thought was one of the better big meaty boys on the defense, I had him at 129. He goes at 140 or 194. And then Andre Yoshivas going to the Bengals. I had him at 143. He goes at 206. So really good value there. And finally, the 7th round, we're going to start with Moro Ojomo going to the Eagles, as if the Eagles could not get better. I had this guy in my top 100 at 86. He goes at 249. So basically like 10 picks before the final pick of the draft. Have to assume it's medicals, because I thought he was pretty impressive at the Shrine. I thought he had a good year. I think he has a good chance to be a early down contributor. So, man, I just don't know if he can make that roster, because that defensive line is pretty darn stacked for the Eagles. But I was shocked not to see him come off the board much earlier. And then I have Corey Trice out of Purdue, the corner, and this was in fact medicals. Kind of pushed his stock down. I think it was Jim Nagy, perhaps, or was it Daniel Jeremiah? I think it was Nagy that said he was probably viewed most commonly as a 5th round pick by the NFL, but shut down boards because of his medicals. I had him at top 100. Guys like Brett Coleman would be willing to take him at the back end of the 1st round, or at least at the very least somewhere in the 2nd. So, yeah, man, I thought it was kind of wild, and the Steelers end up getting a steal. So good on the Steelers, man. This is a dude that's 6'3", 206, plays the corner position. Quick feet, really good movement skills. Was shocked not to see him go much higher. But a few others here. I have, we got DeWayne McBride, who, I don't know, bigger back, not like the most speedy guy. Maybe it was the ball security, but he falls to 222. Had him at 90 on my big board, goes to the Vikings. The Jets take one of my favorite tight ends in this class, Zach Kuntz, at at 220. I had him at 96. Heard medicals were a big thing. And if you remember any of the videos I did talking about Zach Kuntz, that I had questions about an undisclosed injury in a surgery he had on the right leg in 2022. And then Andrew Voorhees, like, he falls because he's not playing next year. He's not playing next year, but I think he's an immediate starter and could be for the Ravens. This was just a great pick. Had him at 112 on my big board. He goes at 229. Just absolutely ridiculous. But that's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing. And as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.